Ready to rewind the clock back to the early 2000s.
Ah, the dawn of the new millennium. A time of dot-com bubbles, Y2K anxieties.
A little blue pill called Viagra that was about to change everything. We're diving into the launch of Cialis, and trust me, this is a story you won't want to miss.
It's like stepping into a time machine. Back when Viagra wasn't just a drug, it was a cultural phenomenon.
Oh, I remember those days. It seemed like Viagra was everywhere all of a sudden. Talk shows, magazine covers, you couldn't escape it.
Pfizer, the company behind Viagra, definitely knew how to make a splash. They went all in, dropping a cool $53 million on marketing right out of the gate.
53 million? Wow. No wonder everyone and their uncle knew about Viagra.
Oh, and they didn't just stop at TV commercials. They assembled a whole sales force, many of them ex-military, to get the word out to doctors. Imagine that, an army of salespeople marching into clinics, spreading the gospel of the little blue pill.
No wonder everyone was telling their patients to ask their doctor. But it's interesting. Cialis wasn't content with just being a Viagra copycat. They had something else in mind, something different. But before we get into all of that, let's lay out what we've got to work with here. We've managed to get our hands on some confidential internal documents from Lilly ICS, the masterminds behind Cialis.
We've also dug up some fascinating market research from those early years. And to make things even juicier, we've even got some intel on how competitors like Pfizer and Bayer reacted to this new kid on the block.
It's like having a front row seat to a pharmaceutical showdown.
Speaking of showdowns, to really understand the challenge Cialis was facing, we need to talk about what Lilly called the healthcare transaction model.
Catchy name. What is it?
Well, it's basically a roadmap of the patient journey, from the moment a man suspects he might have ED to actually seeking treatment.
And I'm guessing that journey isn't exactly a straight line.
You got that right. In fact, it's more like an obstacle course.
What kind of obstacles are we talking about?
Well, think about it. ED is a sensitive topic. There's embarrassment, fear of what it might mean for their overall health.
And let's not forget the whole "it's just a part of aging" myth.
Exactly. All these factors create a sort of cone of silence around ED.
And that cone of silence is probably even louder given that this is all happening right as Viagra is exploding onto the scene.
It's a recipe for hesitation and inaction. In fact, the data we have shows that fewer than half, less than half, of men who think they might have ED actually end up talking to their doctor about it.
Wow, that's a staggering statistic. You'd think with a treatment like Viagra already on the market, more men would be, stepping up to the plate.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But that just highlights the huge hurdle any new ED treatment faces. You're not just competing with other drugs, you're battling silence and stigma.
So how do you even begin to break through that? Where does Cialis even start?
That's the million-dollar question. And to answer it, you have to understand the why behind the hesitation. Why are men so reluctant to discuss this with their doctors?
Okay, so we've got embarrassment, fear of underlying health issues, the misconception that it's just a normal part of aging.
All those play a role. But there's another layer to this that often gets overlooked.
And that is?
The partner's perspective.
Ah, yes. The often forgotten but incredibly important partner. You'd think partners would be pushing their loved ones to get treatment, wouldn't you? Especially with a treatment like Viagra already out there.
Logically, yes. But what we found in those partner interviews was actually pretty surprising.
Yeah.
A lot of the partners we talked to actually had some pretty negative feelings about Viagra.
Negative? How so? I mean, it's supposed to help, right?
Well, sure, on a purely physical level, maybe, but some partners felt like it kind of took away from the intimacy.
I see.
Like it put too much pressure on the situation.
Yeah.
Made it feel less natural.
It's supposed to be about intimacy, right? Not just like checking a box.
Exactly. And some of the partners even said it made their partners seem, well, a little too eager, if you get what I mean.
Like it was all about the mechanics and not about the connection.
Right. One woman even described it as making her husband seem like a sex machine. Not exactly the recipe for romance, is it?
Talk about a curveball. It goes to show you really can't just focus on the physical stuff. ED impacts the whole relationship, not just the guy who's taking the pill.
100%. It's about emotions, perceptions, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
And that's something that often gets lost in the shuffle.
So we've got to factor that into our thinking here. Okay, so we're starting to see the challenges, right? Not just the biological aspects of ED, but the emotional and relationship baggage that comes with it. It's a lot for any drug to handle.
We haven't even talked about the competition.
Oh, right. Because it's not like Cialis was launching in a vacuum. Viagra was already a household name at this point.
Let's put it this way. Pfizer wasn't playing around. They were pouring money into advertising like it was going out of style. Over $100 million in 2000
It's
alone.
curious about defending their turf. I guess when you've got a cash cow like Viagra, you spare no expense.
Exactly. And to make matters even more interesting, Bayer's was jumping into the game with Levitra, hoping to grab a piece of the pie.
So it's Cialis versus Viagra versus Levitra, a three-way showdown for the hearts, minds, and, well, of men everywhere.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So you've got Pfizer with Viagra going for a broad market strategy. Then you've got Bayer with Levitra, kind of testing the waters with a more niche approach, focusing their clinical trials on men with diabetes.
So if Pfizer is going broad and Bayer's going niche, where does that leave Cialis? What's their play?
That, my friend, is the million-dollar question. And to answer it, you've got to figure out who your ideal Cialis customer is.
Okay, so who are we talking about here? Is it the guys who tried Viagra and weren't happy with it? Is it a certain age group, guys with certain health conditions?
All good questions. And thankfully, we've got that market research to guide us.
One thing that really jumped out at me was that there were a lot of men who had tried Viagra but weren't completely sold on it. And a good chunk of them, something like 46%, said they'd be open to trying Cialis.
46%. That's a pretty sizable chunk of potential customers. Exactly. And it makes sense, right? These are guys who are proactive enough to do something about their ED. They've already jumped through the hoops of talking to their doctor, getting a prescription. They're ready to try something new.
So are we talking about the Viagra dropouts? Is that our target market? The guys who tried the little blue pill and said, not for me?
Could be, but it's not enough to just target them. You have to understand why they weren't happy with Viagra in the first place.
Yeah.
What were their pain points?
Right, because it might not be one thing for everyone. Some guys might have had side effects. Others might not have liked the timing aspect. And still others might have had a different reason altogether.
That's exactly what we saw in the data. Some guys were okay with Viagra, just not thrilled. Sort of a reaction.
I'm seeing a pattern here. It wasn't so much that Viagra was a bad product. It's that it didn't quite hit the mark for everyone.
Bingo. And that's where Cialis saw an opportunity. It wasn't about being the anti-Viagra. It was about addressing those unmet needs.
So less about being the better ED drug and more about being the drug that fits better into people's lives.
I know you're talking.
And that's where that whole longer half-life thing comes in, right? Cialis could offer that spontaneity, that feeling of, things happening a little more naturally.
You got it. It's a game changer. And for some couples, that could make all the difference. But remember, we're not just selling a longer half-life here. We're selling a feeling, an experience.
We're selling the chance to rewrite the narrative around ED.
Now you're getting it.
A single might get you on base, but it's that home run swing that really gets the crowd on their feet. But hey, no pressure or anything.
Exactly. And just like in baseball, understanding the strengths of your players is key. Cialis, with its longer half-life, has a unique advantage. It offers something genuinely different to those seeking a solution.
It's like Cialis is the power hitter in this scenario, just waiting for the right pitch. But even with a power hitter, you need a smart batting strategy. You wouldn't tell a power hitter to just bunt, would you?
Absolutely not. And that's where those insights into patient needs and competitive dynamics become crucial. This deep dive has given you a glimpse behind the curtain, the raw data, the whispered anxieties, the unspoken desires of the market. It's about connecting the dots.
So as we wrap things up here, what's the final word for our listener? What should they be thinking about as they prepare to step up to the plate and make their pitch?
Remember, this is more than just a product launch. It's a chance to change the conversation around ED. By understanding the needs, motivations, and concerns of both patients and their partners, and by strategically leveraging Cialis's unique strengths, you can craft a launch strategy that is not only successful but also deeply impactful.
It's about swinging for the fences, not just for sales figures, but for a better understanding of a very common issue that often goes undiscussed. And on that note, we'll leave you with this final thought. We've explored the patient journey, the competitive landscape, and even the surprising influence of partners. But there's one more crucial element to consider: the doctor. How can you equip healthcare providers with the knowledge and tools they need to have those difficult conversations and guide their patients toward the best possible treatment options? That's something to chew on. This has been The Deep Dive.